Hello viewers, Alan here, welcome back to my workshop. So this is part 2, final part of a project to make an oil skimming belt based on a project that Matty of Matty's workshop did. And a link to that below, and also a link to the first part of my video. So here I'll pick up straight away from where I left off before and want to make a mounting plate for the motor. So let's dive straight in. So I want to make a mounting plate for this motor now, and of course pick up on these three tapped M6 holes. It turns out to be quite simple. These bosses are all as close as makes no difference to 11mm. Get out of the way. All 11mm. And what I also noticed is that the spacing across the holes, 73.33, and the same here, and trust me that way. So in other words, the three holes form an equilateral triangle. So to work out the diameter of a circle that would include them, we start off with the outer dimension across there. A simple bit of trigonometry discovers that the distance from here to the centre is 36, so we've got a diameter of 72, and then it was over to the DRO and using its circle layout capabilities to knock up a test plate just to prove that I've got the things correct, and as you see, that worked out pretty well. So now I know exactly how to drill that hole pattern. This was a bit of scrap obviously, and this hole was just wherever it happened to be. So that will be in the centre of the three holes, it just doesn't look like it at the moment. Anyway, so armed with that, it's going to be over to the milling machine and cut out a suitable plate. I'm probably going to use 5mm thick plate. Okay, so I've got the correct hole pattern drilled in the plate to mount the motor, but I misjudged slightly the height of the pulley. So the top of this plate has to be down slightly. So my solution to the problem is to machine a millimetre off the end of each of these things. So that's what I'm doing here. So that should put the top of that post just slightly below the top surface of the plate, and I can feel that it is. There's a slight burr being raised to deal with. Just need to put some decent washers under those. And I think I've got to have to check the size of the washers pretty carefully to make sure that I haven't shifted the problem to the washers fouling the pulley. Goodness me, let's have a quick squiz at that. Well, we're alright on that side, and it looks like I am going to have to be quite fussy about the size of that washer. Oh, that's alright, it's not a problem. Anyway, so that's one way of recovering. So now I've got to do the other two. That feels pretty good. To shorten that screw a bit, I think. We'll tap the hole a bit deeper, one or the other. So we can find a shorter screw. Actually, this sort of screw could be just what the doctor ordered. So the head's bigger than, yeah. get it all in one and low profile to boot. See if I've got any more of those. Of course, I'm only doing this in situ because this thing's such an awkward thing to get hold of. The easiest thing to get hold of it with was this bracket. Sounds like that was touching the side of the hole, doesn't it? Lucky, got two at least. I'll look for a third one in a bit. Alright, let's get this out of the vise and have a proper look. Alright, so it's going to go on there. I found 3 of these screws and I think they will work just fine. So we'll just do a trial fit with this. Make sure that's still alright. Which was the nut for that? This one, I think. Yeah, I think that's going to be just fine. Alright, so now I have to work out how to, where rather, to put the mounting hole. The idea is to make it pivot from this corner and have some sort of a quadrant slot here so I can adjust the belt tension. So I reckon that's the next bit. Okay, so I think you can see I've made a bit of progress now. Got the motor mounted and the pulleys at both ends of the belt. We've actually got a working scenario here. And the belt seems to be fairly happy to stay on the rollers where I want it to be, so that's good. Interestingly though, I'm sure you can see the motor going up and down. That's actually because the belt's a dud. It's got some bizarre misshapen aspect, and it's not the pulleys, it's the belt. But anyway, this thing takes so little force to drive it, it really doesn't take much pressure on the belt anyway, so just the weight of this is enough to create enough friction for the drive. Anyway, so the next thing, start thinking about some feet for this thing to stand on so it can stand, and I'm thinking that I might try something like that. The key thing here is to make sure that whatever I put on the bottom will actually fit through the hole here. So it might have to be a little bit of trial and error to find out what the right thing to do is. Anyway, that's the next thing. And so we can see it standing up for itself for the first time. That's looking encouraging. So the next thing is to, I guess, try it in the hole, see if we can actually get it inside the milling machine. Okay, so I've done a trial install. Good news is it does in fact fit through the hole, and I can sort of get it somewhere near the position. But the suds pump sits on is fixed to a plate which is 150 wide, and these feet need to straddle that to get underneath it, because there isn't enough room to sort of tuck them in from underneath. So that plate's about 150 wide. So you can see basically I need to have these, reposition these feet somehow so they're essentially on the outsides of these upright tubes. So a little snag, but nothing serious. Let's get back to it. Right, well, as you can see, I've got the new feet on, and there's a good 150 clearance between the feet now, so I'm pretty sure that'll fit to be able to straddle over the plate that the suds pump is mounted on. And the way I've mounted these on there, they're actually welded onto little right angle brackets. They're certainly stiff enough to hold this without any trouble at all, but equally they will in fact bend a little bit if I want them to. So if it turns out the floor of the milling machine isn't quite level or something and it gets a bit of a wobble, I'll be able to twist these a little bit to compensate for that. Anyway, for the moment it's just standing flat. So next thing is to make the scraper and gutter, I guess. And in thinking about this, I actually had a conversation with Matty, who's already made one of these, and his advice was to mount this as high as possible and to not have any more fall on it than you really need. So that's what I'm going to do. So I've welded a bracket onto the end of this thing and another tab here, and surprisingly for me the welding went pretty well. Anyway, so I've just got to drill a couple of holes now to mount that, and the reason I wanted to do it with bolts is just in case this thing gets in the way when I try to insert this whole lot through the hole in the side of the milling machine. But also bolting it on gives me options in the future for how to channel the output. Hang a bucket on it or actually run a pipe to the outside, I'm not sure yet. But anyway, next thing is to drill a pair of holes and get this thing bolted on. So I decided to drill these holes on the drill press because it's easier to put it there and spot through. Make sure I get the holes exactly where I want them to be. So let's go. Variable speed on this drill makes it really easy, so you can start off fast when you're working with the small bit in the middle of the drill, then slow it down when you get to the larger diameters. Right, let's reposition and do the second hole. Right, before drilling this hole I needed to check to make sure that it was actually going to miss the back side of this shaft, so I've checked that very carefully and set this square. I think you can see that got a bit of a margin there, and it needs a bit of a margin because the shaft diameter is 5/8 and this end here is turned down slightly, so when the drill goes through it'll actually be closer to the side of the shaft than it appears from here, but there's still going to be enough space. So we're good to go. Or at least we're good to go drilling the hole at that location. So now I've just got to set some clamps up to make sure it doesn't move. This setup, the most important thing is it doesn't try to get any closer to the shaft, I suppose. So we'll put that on there, make sure that can't happen. So I don't know how well you'll be able to see in this picture, but I certainly do have some fall, but it's not very much. Anyway, so that can't it can go that way. It can go that way a little bit, but it can't, which wouldn't hurt, but it can't come this way. So I can hold it like that when I'm doing the drilling, I think. That's the go there. So let's get set up, and off we go. Okay, let's pull all that lot down and make sure it all fits. Alright, well things looking pretty good here. This certainly fits. And importantly, I think fits in a way that's going to be possible to do what I've just did when this thing is actually inside the column. And of course I've got plenty of movement here to get this in place. I was going to put a quadrant gear or quadrant slot around here for the belt tension, but I've decided it really isn't worth the effort. I'll just put a lock nut here and just let this just hang, and I think the weight of this puts enough tension on the belt, and I think everything's going to be fine. I was a bit worried that putting this thing on with the pressure on the belt might cause the tracking to go out of whack, but it doesn't seem to have. Whether it will be better or worse when the belt gets wet, I don't know, but certainly in this dry run testing the tracking's fine. So I think the next thing is to clean a few things up, in particular, since I've decided not to put that radial slot here or quadrant slot, I can trim a lot of this plate off, and I think I'll do that and make it look a little bit tidier. And I don't know, perhaps I'll cap the tops of the tubes, I don't know, a couple of other fiddle type things, and slap some paint on it, and then we'll find out whether it actually works. I'm hoping that for the first trial this piece will actually stick out through the side of the through the hole in the side of the column, so then I can decide properly what to do with it, and whether to in fact even leave the thing in there all the time or not. I mean, that was my original idea, and I probably still will do that, but anyway, let's get it tidied up, get some paint on it, and then see if it works. Right, so I've completely disassembled it and painted all the pieces, so now I've got a Meccano set waiting for reassembly. But when you see how many pieces there are, it makes it easy to understand why there was a lot of work involved in getting this far. Anyway, time for assembly, and I'll bring you back when it's done. Alright, so there we have it. Looks a bit better with a splash of paint, doesn't it? So, as I alluded to earlier, that wasn't going to fit through the fit inside. Actually, it was just too long, so I had to cut that off short, and I've decided to put a catch bottle on the side here. When it's installed, I'll be able to get this through the porthole in the side of the machine. I've got no idea how often I'm going to have to empty that. We'll see. If it turns out to be too often, well, I'll have to come up with something else. But that all seems to work. The tracking's still good. So yeah, just got to try and get it in the machine now. Okay, well, let's see if we can get this thing in the hole. Alright, let's see how we get on. The easiest thing to film, I've got to say. It's pretty hard trying to find an angle where you can see anything interesting. That might be about as good as I can do. Perhaps you can see down there it's standing in the goop. Alright, well, let's get back to trying to get that bottle on. I think we're actually in a position to turn it on and see what happens. But you might be able to see down the bottom there, there's a hose clamp that's very close to the rubber belt. So I probably need to loosen that and turn the clamp round. But as far as I can see, it's not actually touching it. So let's turn it on and see what happens. Actually looks like it's working pretty well. It certainly looks like it's mostly oil that it's picking up. That might be about as good as I'm going to get, I think. I'm going to be careful not to drop the camera in the water. But anyway, that's certainly siphoning off some oil. That's working really well, actually. Alright, well, we'll let that get on with that for a while. Well, I'm very happy with that. I'm going to certainly call that a success. It may be with more use I discover that the belt doesn't track as well as it seems to be at the moment, and if that's the case I might have to put some guides, side guides in there or something. And it's pretty clear that putting the catch can in there is a bit fiddly, so I'll be leaving that there and pumping it out when it needs to be done. But yeah, I'm very happy with the result. I think that's going to scavenge lots of oil out of there and clean up the flood coolant no end. So, hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for watching anyway, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.